Hello, guys and gals, and this is part 8 of our reading of A Natural History of Dragons by, excuse me, I meant a memoir by Lady Trent. It's a book by Marie Brennan. This is part 8 of our reading. So, anyways, pardon me, I have to wipe my nose. Got a little bit of dust up my nose. Ugh, it's kind of dusty up here. Anyways, we are going to go over the copyright information, which should be on your screen right now. I'm going to find it myself, and then we will go from there. It clearly says here, copyright 2013 by Brennan Noonschwander, and it's all rights reserved, so I'm taking it as okay for being on my YouTube channel. Now, what we have here is, in the last episode, last reading, Isabella and her husband Jacob, they finally made it to Vestrana, and or they're on their way there. Rather, they're headed to a city, a bigger village, and there really isn't much else going on. It's about to rain and storm, and so I don't know what's going to happen. But so far, everything is okay. Um, so we're going to continue. Okay, I'm going to switch it back to this, and we're going to go on. Okay, let me see. We are on page 96. That's good. I should have written that down, but I will later. Anyways, here we go. Pardon me, I just got done sneezing, so my voice is probably going to be a little bit ragged for a while. Okay. Actually, we made it to page 97, I guess. Okay. I did so. Okay. I sighed, but he was right. Closing the book, I turned in my seat and reached over the back of the wagon bench to stow it in a pack that would all too soon prove whether it was as weatherproof as advertised or not. As I did so, a gust of shockingly cold air pulled at my sleeves and ice stung my face. Wondering if we were in danger of hail, I looked up. I have little recollection of the next several seconds, just a moment of frozen staring, and then, with no transition, my voice shrieked, "Get down!" as I wrapped my arms around my husband and dragged him forward off the wagon bench. Two other screams overlaid my own. One high-pitched and awful came from our driver as claws snagged him off the wagon and into the air. The other, lower, but even more terrible, came from above as the dragon plummeted out of the clouds and raked over our heads. Give me just a sec. Okay, so, anyways, Jacob and I landed in the wagon traces. The reins and harness tangled our limbs while the horses shied and whinnied their terror. Being on the outside, I tumbled free and cried out to see the wagon lurching forward, my husband still caught within. He fell a moment later, directly beneath the wagon, and the wheels passed close enough to to leave a track across his coat. I crawled towards him, hearing shouts from all around us. Frantic glances skyward showed me nothing. The dragon had vanished again. From the slope ahead, though, came the agonizing groans of our driver. Just as I reached Jacob, a loud noise cracked the air. A gunshot. As one of the other drivers fired off the rifle he carried against highwaymen or wild animals. Wild animals, I had not until that moment put dragons in that class. I had thought them something apart. "Stay down, Isabel," Jacob said, shielding me with his own body. I crouched in his shadow and realized quite irrevocably that my bonnet had gone astray. The wind was very cold in my hair. A great flapping as of sails, the dragon thought, though we could not see it. Looking under Jacob's arm, I saw Lord Hilford put out a hand and stop his driver, who would have fired at the sound. With nothing to see, there was no point in wasting the round. Then suddenly there was something to see. Several shots rang out, and I swallowed the protest and tried to leap free. That tried to leap free of me. There was no vulnerable runt in a menagerie. The dragon was huge, its wingspan far larger than a wagon, with stone gray hide and wings that kicked up dust with every beat. The gun fired, and the beast made a dreadful noise, aborting stoop, its stoop on us, and climbing rapidly for the sky. Clouds enveloped it once more, and we waited and waited until at last Lord Hilford sighed. I think it's gone. Jacob helped me to my feet, and my bonnet was caught in a low, scrubby bush. I retrieved it and smoothed it out with shaking hands, while Mr. Wilker and one of the other men went after the driver. The dragon had seized its had seized. Oh, the dragon had seized. Okay. His claws had left great gashes in his back and chest, but the worst injury was to his legs, which had broken badly when he fell. Blood seeped out where the bones had breached the skin. If I had not seen a similar injury, if I had not seen a similar injury once to a horse, I might have fainted. Make room for him in one of the wagons, Lord Hilford said in Chiavoran, then turned to me. Mrs. Cambert, if you would, in my green chest there is some laudanum, black bottle. It's in the top rack. I crammed my bonnet back onto my head and did as he asked. There were bits of grit and rock in my palms when I picked out which I picked out as I went, and I had torn my skirt, but seeing the driver, I was acutely aware of how lucky Jacob and I had been, had I not seen the dragon coming. Rain began to fall. Mr. Wilker bound up our driver's wounds as best he could. We needed to get him to shelter, but first there was his cart to deal with. The horses had quite understandably bolted at the approach of the dragon. They had both gone lame, and the wagon had overturned, spilling our trunks onto the ground and knocking one of them open. Working together, the men retrieved everything while I created a makeshift canopy to keep the rain off the injured man. The laudanum fortunately put him into a shallow sleep, and he did no more than moan in protest when we moved onward, and the road jolted him where he lay. In this manner, sorry, I lost my place. In this manner, bedraggled and scarred, we arrived in the village of Drustanev. I did not see much at first of the building that was to be our home for the next several months. I accompanied the injured driver as some locals carried him inside, and tried to explain in my very bad Vestrani what had happened. I expected that little of what I said even registered on them between my limited vocabulary, appalling accent, and atrocious grammar, but one thing I did notice. The villagers did not seem surprised to see his wounds. No one could have mistaken them for anything other than dragon inflicted, even without me repeating that one word over and over again. I'm going to try to pronounce this. Balur. And they did not seem surprised. Relatively approachable, Lord Hilford had called the Vestrani dragons. Relatively approachable, Lord Hilford had called the Vestrani dragons that first evening at Renwick's when I heard of his expedition. It was not a phrase I would have chosen. A young woman appeared out of nowhere at my elbow, tugging me away from the men now swarming through the downstairs of the building. Using a flood of incomprehensible Vestrani, she seemed to be trying to convince me to sit down in a quiet place and have vapors over my misfortune. I'm afraid I gravely disappointed her by hurrying off into the rain, my already ruined bonnet listing to one side of my head, and making certain our things were being brought inside. It seemed a minor thing to worry about, with howls emanating from a back room where they were trying to set the driver's broken legs. But I was no use there, and could not abide sitting around and doing nothing. My my efforts averted a buildup of trunks in the front hall of that would the trunks in the front hall that would have made passage impossible. By repeating those few parts of my Vestrani vocabulary that were relevant to the situation, accompanied by some gesticulation, I managed to get some of the local servants to shunt our luggages upstairs to the rooms we would sleep in. Jacob found me in the midst of this and insisted on examining me for injuries. He exclaimed over my skinned palms and had Mr. Wilker bind them up, although when they were even though by then they were hardly bleeding at all. For my own part, I conducted a similar examination of Jacob, and was relieved to find that his coat might have been badly torn along the back, but his skin was nothing more than scratched. An inch less into our fall, and the dragon would have caught him like the driver. The noise in the back room subsided at last, and Lord Hilford appeared, weary and bloodstained. He's asleep now, the Earl said. Whether he'll survive, well, we shall see. Come. We followed him obediently, Jacob, Mr. Wilker, and myself, like very lost and unnerved ducklings into a room off the front hall. Someone had made an effort to transform this dark, paneled, low-ceilinged chamber into a sitting room, though whoever had done so appeared to have been operating from a third-hand description of skirling customs. There were couches at least, even if they were more like wooden benches with cushions placed along the seat and back, but we sank into them gratefully, for somewhere Lord Hilford produced a bottle. From somewhere Lord Hilford produced a bottle, and there were clay tumblers on a nearby table. He poured a small amount of brandy in 4 of these and passed them around. Even to me, I had not tasted brandy since the physician sewed me up after the wolf drake, and had to force myself to take a sip, momentarily overwhelmed by the memory. As the warmth traveled through me, dispelling the chill of the rain, Lord Hilford said heartily, "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Camhurst." 12 minutes, okay. I looked at him. Sorry? Why to me more than another? I know I spoke to you of the dangers of this expedition, but I did not anticipate anything like this. What the devil's got into that thing? Mr. Wilker demanded, and got a reproving look from Jacob for his language. My question exactly, I said, if it's rather more vivid, rather more vivid terms than I am permitted to use. I was under the impression that these rock wyverns tended to attack. I was not under the impression that these rock wyverns tended to attack people. Lord Hilford scowled and knocked back the remainder of the brandy. They don't. Then I don't blame you for failing to warn me of a danger you could not have expected, I told him, my fingers curling around the clay mug. By all means, let us be sorry for the poor driver and pray for his recovery, but I am not the one injured, Lord Hilford. I do not need your apology. It sounded well, and I meant it as much as I could. Under no circumstance was I going to begin by letting anyone think I would wilt at the first hint of peril. Such wilting could be done later, when there was no one present to see. I was rewarded with a rueful smile from the Earl. You will tarnish my reputation as a gentleman, Miss Camhurst, with such gallant courage as that. We still have Mr. Wilker's question to answer, I said. It was easier to think of the dragon's attack as a puzzle in need of solving. That gave me something to focus on. What could provoke such behavior? It can't have been rabid. Jacob laid one hand on his forearm. Isabella, we might leave that question till morning. Now is not a suitable time. If by not suitable you mean that we don't have any answers, Lord Hilford said. He put his empty tumbler down on the scarred surface of the side table. Or at least I don't. Perhaps the excitement rattled my brains loose. But that's not quite unlike anything I have seen. But no, that was quite unlike anything I have seen from a rockworm before, and it's been and I've been close to them many a time. I shall have to ponder it. At any rate, this is the house where we are to be staying. Our luggage should be around here somewhere. He stared about the ill-lit room as if the trunks might be lost in the shadows. Upstairs, I said. When I rose to my feet, I was pleasant to find my knees steady, um, and I had feared the moment of sitting and relative relaxation would have persuaded them to give out, though where precisely I sent them we must discover. We ascended the stairs in a damp herd, all bumbling against one another in the dark and cramped stairway. The boards creaked alarmingly beneath my feet, let alone Dr. Hilford's. Okay, we have a picture here. We're going to go look at that. I think, here we go. Here's the picture. It says here, this is Drunstenev. Okay. That's a nice picture. Okay. It said, okay. The boards creaked alarmingly beneath my feet, let alone Lord Hilford's. But held. Once in the corridor above, we found that our luggage had gotten all mixed up despite the tags with our names. By now, however, the hours had grown late enough that we did not care. We pulled out the valises that contained our traveling gear, allocated rooms, and fell into bed with hardly a pause to change out of our wet clothes. All through the night I dreamt of the dragon and fell again and again to the hard Vestrani soil, just out of the range of its claws. When I awoke the next morning, Jacob had already gone. Morning sunlight showed me the room in better detail than I had seen the previous night, disclosing a bleak and cheerless place. The walls, ceiling, and floor were all of the same dark wood. I stretched out one hand from where I lay and found it was painted with a kind of resin that presumably sealed it against weathering. The ceiling beams were low and heavy, giving the room a claustrophobic feel. Now our furniture consisted of a bed without posters or canopy, a wardrobe, a dressing table with a mirror, and nothing else. Excuse me. Oh, the air outside my coverlet was quite chill, as I discovered when I left the bed. Shivering, I made a quick search and pulled on my dressing robe and slippers. These warmed me enough that I could search more thoroughly for a trunk with suitable clothing in it. The previous day's dress was piled on the floor, stained, torn, and utterly beyond repair. I was lucky enough to find one of the plain, sturdy dresses I had commissioned before leaving Skirland, with buttons I could reach on my own. Just as I finished with the last of them, the door creaked open, and the young woman from the night before poked her head tentatively in. She was tall and of that build we so politely call strapping, and applaud when found in peasant folk. With strong features and a wealth of dark hair, she also at that moment had an alarmed expression, apparently provoked by the sight of me dressing myself without aid. From the words that poured out of her mouth, I gathered that she was supposed to be my lady's maid. I had been afraid of that. She would need to be educated in my duties, starting with the purchase of a bell I could use to summon her when I awoke. I laid that aside for the moment, however, and held up my hands to silence her. When she subsided, I asked, Toba Prodsir E. Struz? What is your name? Or at least that's what I hoped I had said. Dagmira, she replied. Dagmira, I said. Isabel Camburst E. I think it's EIY, EI maybe. Z, Mrs. Camburst. Chi, Tech, Ablick. This was a line I had rehearsed many times until I was certain I pronounced it at least as well as our Chiaveran drivers did. I am Isabella Camhurst. You may call me Mrs. Camhurst. If I was to train this young woman to be my lady's maid, then we would have to start by establishing boundaries. I was her employer, not a child to be chivied around. Proper respect was essential. Okay, just checking the time. Uh, Proper respect was essential. Where was that? Here it is. I did not want to reflect that a Vistrani child would know more of the area, the local customs than I did, let alone the language. For my next display of linguistic accomplishment, I asked Dagmira where my husband had gone, and received in return a second flood of words too quick to comprehend. Another attempt, this time prefaced by Setkasti, Setkasti, slower, rewarded me by a more suitable pace, but still far too many words. Far too many words. Oh, here we go. I did not understand. Jacob had gone out. No more could I discern. Frustrated by this, I gave Dagmira broken instructions to bring to that room all the trunks with mine or Jacob's name on them, and to remove all those with Lord Hilford's or Mr. Wilker's. Then went downstairs. The kitchen was cold and empty, and the only smell a lingering one of blood from the doctoring of the driver. It drove out any thought I had for breakfast. Compared with the dark interior of the house, the street outside, if I could dignify the hard-packed dirt path with such a grand name, was painfully bright. I squinted and shielded my eyes until they adjusted. In the distance I could hear voices chattering in fluent Vistrani, but none were familiar to me. The exterior of the house was not much more promising. Weather had faded the dark resin to more of a golden color, but it was bereft of decoration, showing only just bare planks broken here and there by narrow windows and capped by a steeply sloping thatched roof. The bedroom had not exhibited such an angle. There must have been attic space above us. A glance around showed me that there were few houses nearby, and those downslope. They appeared to be single-story apart from the presumed attics. Our lodging appeared to be the best Dresdenev had to offer. The path led downward to the rest of the village. Descending, I saw that most of the houses, unlike our own, had low fences, enclosing geese-filled yards. Women stood at the gates, spinning thread and chatting with one another, not bothering to disguise the way they watched me. I smiled pleasantly at them as I passed, but my attention was mostly on the familiar wagons drawn up around the village well, with one of our Chiaveran drivers fixing a horse into a harness. Are you leaving soon? I asked him, a little surprised. He glanced over his shoulder at one of the houses. Soon as they bring Mingello out, we have to go on to the Boyer's Lodge. I knew they still needed to deliver their cargo, but Mingello was the injured man. Oh, surely it will be kinder to leave him here to heal, rather than subject him to such a journey. The driver spat into the dirt, unconcerned with propriety. They say there's a doctor in the Boyer's house. Chiaveran better than some Vestrani peasant any day. Even allowing for partisan national pride, I had to admit his assessment was probably fair. Surely the Boyer's man would be better educated than the village bone setter. I pitied Mingello, though having to endure the trip. Jacob found me shortly after that. He too had apparently dug clothes out of a chest in random haste. His suit was rather finer than the situation called for. "Isabella, there you are," he said, as if I had been the one to vanish so early in the morning. "The drivers have to continue on to the Boyer's Lodge, but after that they're going back to Chiavora. You?" I stopped him with a hand on his wrist, very aware of the scrawny eyes on us. "Please don't," I said in a soft voice, so no one could eavesdrop, even if they spoke skrilling. Um, skirling. Don't ask if don't ask it for me. Don't ask it of me. You know I will not go, and I don't want to argue in front of these strangers. His hazel eyes searched mine. The mountain wind disarranged his hair, adding a touch of distress I would have found charming under other circumstances. Only then did it occur to me that I had left without so much as brushing my own, let alone pinning it up. What sort of image was I presenting now, argument or no argument? Perhaps my own distress charmed him. Jacob sighed. The oh, I don't know if we can get through this or not. Um, Jacob sighed, though the worry did not leave his eyes. "Can I at least ask you to keep close to home for now? Hilford is asking questions of the village leaders. What's going on with the dragons, and where Grit where Gritelkin is. Until we have that settled, please behave yourself." I resented the implication that I had that I was misbehaving already, but that faded next to other concerns. I had assumed that Gendrick Gritelkin, Lord Hilford's local contact, was one of the men rushing about last night. "He's not here?" "No, he isn't." "Will you go back to the house?" "The house where I would have to face the incomprehensible Dagmira?" "Yes, dear. Please let me know what's going on when you can, and what we are supposed to do for food." Okay, well, we're going to stop that here. We are almost done with this chapter, and then we will start chapter 8, I believe it is. Let's see. Yeah, chapter 8. But there's still a paragraph left, and I don't think we have time to read that, so we are going to end it here for now. We have been reading, as you can see on the screen, A Natural History of Dragons, a memoir by Lady Trent, and it is by Marie Brennan. It is a book by Marie Brennan. If you like this content, then make sure you like and subscribe and ring that bell so that you know when I upload. Also, if you want to support me in any way or join the Discord server, all that information is in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.